The Silent Hunter. The stars hung like frozen tears in the void as Captain Ilara Voss stared through the viewport of her scout ship, the Starweaver. The ship drifted silently at the edge of the Cygnus expanse, a region where human colonies had begun to flourish, despite the shadow of the Keldari Empire looming over them. Ilara's mission was simple: monitor Imperial movement and report back to Colonial Defense. Nothing more. "Captain, we're picking up something strange." Lieutenant Marcos called from his sensor station. His voice carried an edge Ilara had never heard before. "Bearing 347, moving at." "This can't be right." Ilara moved to his station, her boots barely making a sound on the deck plates. "What have you got, Lieutenant?" "It's not registering properly. No heat signature, no radiation, no conventional propulsion." Marcos looked up, his face paled in the glow of the monitors. "But it's moving, Captain. Moving with purpose." "Show me," Ilara ordered, and the main display flickered to life. At first, she thought the screen was malfunctioning. The object appeared as little more than a distortion against the starfield, a shadow where light should be. It glided through space with impossible grace, as though the laws of physics were mere suggestions. "What kind of ship is that?" whispered Ensign Rhea from the navigation console. Ilara had no answer. In 15 years of space exploration, she had never seen anything like it. The vessel, if it could be called that, seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its hull, if it even had one, pulsed with subtle ripples like the surface of a black ocean. "It's changing course," Marcos reported, his fingers dancing across the console. "It's heading directly toward the Keldari patrol route." Ilara's breath caught. The Keldari Empire had been pressing against human territory for months, their massive fleets conducting exercises that came closer to the colonies with each passing week. The diplomatic channels were still open, but everyone knew war was coming. The Empire simply didn't tolerate competition, and humanity's rapid expansion had them nervous. "Follow it," she ordered. "Passive sensors only. I want to know what that thing is doing." The Starweaver slipped through space, its stealth systems engaged as they tracked the mysterious vessel. Hours passed in tense silence as they observed the shadow ship gliding through the void without any apparent technology driving it forward. "Captain," Communications Officer Jaina said suddenly. Keldari chatter picking up. "They've spotted our friend." The tactical display lit up as 5 Keldari warships appeared at the edge of sensor range. 3 destroyers, a heavy cruiser, and their flagship, the Immutable Truth. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a small moon. "They're hailing the shadow ship," Jaina reported. "Standard Imperial protocols: identify or be destroyed." Ilara leaned forward. "And no response from our mystery vessel. It's continuing on course." "Wait." Jaina frowned, adjusting her headset. "The Keldari are powering weapons. They're going to fire." The space around the Keldari flagship bloomed with energy as it unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes toward the shadow vessel. Ilara watched, heart in her throat, as the deadly projectiles closed in. Then something impossible happened. The torpedoes simply vanished. Not exploded, not deflected, vanished, as though they had never existed. "What the hell?" Marcos whispered. The shadow ship hadn't changed course, hadn't activated any visible defenses. It simply continued its silent glide through space as though nothing had happened. The Keldari fired again, this time with their main cannons. Lances of energy streaked across the void, only to dissipate into nothingness when they came within 100 meters of the vessel. And then the shadow ship responded. There was no weapon discharge, no missile launch, no energy surge that their sensors could detect. There was simply a pulse, a ripple in space itself, and the nearest Keldari destroyer went dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, just completely powerless, drifting. "My God," Ilara breathed. A second pulse followed, and another destroyer lost power. The Keldari were now in full retreat, their disciplined formation breaking apart as they tried to escape. "Captain," Jaina whispered, "we're receiving a transmission." "From the Keldari?" "No, from the shadow ship." The bridge fell silent as Ilara nodded. "Put it through." There was no voice, no message in any conventional sense. Instead, images filled their minds, star systems, planets, civilizations rising and falling. And through it all, a sense of watching, of judgment, of waiting. Then came words, not heard but felt. "We are the harbinger. We observe. We remember. We judge." As quickly as it had come, the presence withdrew from their minds, leaving them gasping. "It's changing course again," Marcos reported, his voice shaky. "It's heading directly for Nova Haven." Ilara's blood ran cold. Nova Haven was their newest and most vulnerable colony, established just within the treaty boundaries. If the Keldari had planned to make a move, that would have been their first target. "Set course for Nova Haven. Maximum speed," she ordered. "And get me a secure channel to colonial defense. They need to know what we're dealing with." "What exactly are we dealing with, Captain?" Rhea asked, fear evident in her voice. Ilara stared at the shadow on their screens, watching as it effortlessly outpaced the fleeing Keldari ships. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think it just might be the most powerful entity in this sector of space." As they raced toward Nova Haven, the Starweaver's systems began picking up distress calls from the settlements. Not because they were under attack, but because the sky above them had darkened as the Harbinger took position in low orbit. "It's just watching them," Jaina said, monitoring the feeds from the colony, hovering over the main settlement. Before Ilara could respond, their sensors lit up again. The Keldari hadn't retreated far. They had regrouped. 3 more warships had joined them, including the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, the pride of the Imperial fleet. "They're going to attack again," Ilara realized, with Nova Haven caught in the middle. "Captain," Marcos called out, "we're being hailed. It's the Keldari flagship." Surprised, Ilara nodded. On screen, the face that appeared belonged to High Commander Thrax, his scaled features arranged in what passed for concern among the Keldari. "Human vessel," he began without preamble. "You must withdraw from this region immediately." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "This is neutral space, Commander. By treaty. Treaty be damned." Thrax snarled. "That thing above your colony is not what you think. It is known to us. It is death. It seemed more interested in disabling your ships than destroying them," Ilara pointed out. Thrax's eyes narrowed. "You know nothing. The ships it disabled. Their crews are gone. Not dead. Gone. No bodies, no traces. As if they never existed." A chill ran down Ilara's spine. "What is it?" "We call it the Harbinger. It has appeared at the edges of our empire for centuries, always before great calamities. It does not communicate. It does not negotiate. It watches, and then it judges." Thrax leaned closer to the screen. "And when it judges, civilizations fall." "What does it want with Nova Haven?" "I don't know," Thrax admitted. "But we will not allow it to remain. The Eternal Dominion carries weapons specifically designed to combat such entities. We will destroy it, even if we must destroy your colony in the process." Ilara's hands clenched into fists. "You fire on that colony, and this becomes an act of war. Better war than extinction." Thrax cut the transmission. "They're moving into attack position," Marcos reported. "Weapons hot, shields at maximum." Ilara made her decision. "Take us between the Keldari fleet and Nova Haven. We need time." "Sir," Rhea questioned, "the Starweaver is just a scout ship. We can't possibly." "We're not going to fight them," Ilara said. "We're going to talk to the Harbinger." Silence fell over the bridge. "How?" Jaina finally asked. Ilara stared at the shadow ship on their screen. "It was in our minds before. Maybe it can hear us again." She closed her eyes, focusing her thoughts outward. "Harbinger," she projected. "We need to understand. Why are you here?" For long moments, nothing happened. Then, like a tide rushing in, the presence filled their minds once more. This time, the images were more specific. Caldari ships attacking human colonies, resources being stripped, people enslaved. Then the images shifted to show the same colonies thriving, expanding, eventually becoming like the Caldari themselves. Conquerors, destroyers. We observe the paths, came the thought. We prevent the worst from manifesting. It's showing us possible futures, Ilara whispered. It's trying to stop something before it happens. The Harbinger's presence withdrew again, but not completely. It seemed to be waiting. The Caldari are in firing range, Marcos reported. Their weapons are locked on the Harbinger. And on us. Ilara opened a channel to the Caldari flagship. Commander Thrax, hold your fire. The Harbinger isn't here to destroy. It's here to prevent destruction. You've been compromised, Thrax replied coldly. Stand aside or be destroyed with it. The Harbinger has been watching both our species, Ilara continued desperately. It sees what could happen, what the Caldari might do to us, or what we might become if we follow your path. It's trying to break the cycle. Nonsense, Thrax sneered. It's an abomination, an entity from beyond normal space. It cannot be reasoned with. Then why hasn't it destroyed you already? Ilara challenged. It clearly has the power. I think it's giving us a choice. The Eternal Dominion's main cannon began to glow as it charged. You're making a mistake, Commander, Ilara warned. If you fire that weapon, you prove the Harbinger right about your species. For a moment, Thrax hesitated. Then his face hardened. Fire. A beam of concentrated energy erupted from the dreadnought, splitting the darkness of space as it raced toward the Harbinger. The shadow ship didn't move, didn't react, until the beam was almost upon it. Then, with terrible grace, the Harbinger simply shifted. Not a dodge, not a jump, but as though it existed in multiple places simultaneously and simply chose to emphasize a different location. The beam passed harmlessly through where it had been. What happened next would forever be seared into Ilara's memory. The Harbinger pulsed once, and space itself seemed to fold around the Eternal Dominion. The massive dreadnought compressed, twisted, and then vanished. Not exploded, not torn apart. Simply gone, as though it had never existed. Silence fell across all channels. The remaining Caldari ships froze in place, weapons powered down. Above Nova Haven, the Harbinger drifted closer to the Starweaver. Its presence touched their minds once more, but this time with a clarity that hadn't been there before. You understand. You see the paths. You can choose differently. Yes, Ilara responded aloud. We can choose differently, both humans and Caldari. The presence seemed satisfied. Then, without warning, the Harbinger began to change. Its shadow-like form became less distinct, stretching and thinning until it resembled nothing so much as a tear in the fabric of reality. A moment later, it was gone. Ilara slumped in her chair, exhausted. Open a channel to Commander Thrax. When the Caldari appeared on screen, his usual imperial arrogance was gone. In its place was something Ilara had never seen in a Caldari before: uncertainty. It spared us, Thrax said simply. It gave us a chance, Ilara corrected. Both of us. To find a different path. Thrax was silent for a long moment. We will withdraw from this sector, he finally declared. The High Council must hear of this encounter. As the Caldari ships retreated, Ilara gazed out at the stars where the Harbinger had vanished. Whatever it was, alien, entity, or something beyond their comprehension, it had changed everything. The war that had seemed inevitable now hung in balance. And somewhere out there, the Harbinger watched and waited. The judgment of stars. 3 weeks after the Harbinger's disappearance, Nova Haven had changed. What had once been a frontier outpost, vulnerable, uncertain of its future, had become something more. Ships from across human space arrived daily, bringing scientists, diplomats, and the merely curious. Everyone wanted to know about the entity that had made the mighty Caldari Empire retreat. Captain Ilara Voss stood in the newly constructed observation dome, watching the stars with a wariness that hadn't left her since that day. The Starweaver remained in orbit, its sensors constantly scanning for any sign of the shadow ship's return. Still looking for ghosts, Captain? Ilara turned to find Admiral Chen approaching, his weathered face betraying the stress of recent weeks. As the highest-ranking colonial defense officer to reach Nova Haven after the incident, he had taken command of the rapidly expanding situation. Not ghosts, sir. Just vigilant. Chen nodded, coming to stand beside her at the viewport. The diplomatic corps is having a field day with this. The Caldari have requested formal peace talks for the first time in their history. They're afraid, Ilara said simply. And they should be. Whatever that thing was, it erased their most advanced warship from existence. Chen studied her face. But you don't think it was hostile, do you? Ilara chose her words carefully. I think the Harbinger has its own purpose. It didn't destroy the Caldari out of malice. It did it because they refused to see another path. And what path would that be? Coexistence, she replied. It showed me visions, possible futures. In one, the Caldari conquered us. In another, we became like them. Both ended in destruction. Chen was silent for a moment. The Caldari commander, Thrax, has requested a meeting with you, privately. Ilara's surprise must have shown on her face. I know, Chen continued. Unprecedented. I've arranged for it to happen here tomorrow. Whatever you experienced with that entity, the Caldari believe you understand it. That makes you very valuable right now. After the Admiral left, Ilara remained in the observation dome, her thoughts troubled. The Harbinger's presence in her mind had faded, but it had left something behind. An awareness, a sensitivity to possibilities that hadn't been there before. Sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could still see those branching futures, the countless paths that human and Caldari civilizations might take. Most led to darkness. But some, a precious few, led to light. Commander Thrax arrived without ceremony, his shuttle docking at Nova Haven's orbital platform, rather than the colony itself. It was a practical choice. His scaled, reptilian form would require an environmental suit to breathe comfortably in human atmospheres. Ilara met him in the station's secure conference room, accompanied only by Lieutenant Marcos as required by protocol. Thrax had dispensed with the elaborate armor that Caldari officers typically wore, instead dressed in what appeared to be a simple military uniform. His eyes, vertical slits of amber, fixed on her immediately. Captain Voss, he said, his translator rendering his sibilant speech into flat standard. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Commander, she acknowledged with a slight nod. I admit I'm curious about what brings the Empire's third highest naval commander to a human colony. Thrax's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. Direct. Good. We have little time for pleasantries. He placed a small device on the table between them. It projected a holographic star map of the sector. The Harbinger has been sighted again. Ilara's pulse quickened. Where? Here. Thrax indicated a point deep in Caldari territory. The Axion Reach, one of our oldest military installations. What happened? Nothing. Yet. It watches. As it watched your colony. Thrax's clawed hand clenched, but its presence has caused difficulties. Panic. Desertion. The High Command is divided on how to respond. And what do you advocate, Commander? Thrax's eyes narrowed. I witnessed what happened to the Eternal Dominion. 5,000 of our finest, gone in an instant. If the Harbinger wanted to destroy the Caldari Empire, it could. It chooses not to. He leaned forward. You communicated with it. You must tell me what it wants. Ilara considered carefully. It showed me possible futures, branches in time. It seems to exist to prevent the worst outcomes. Prevent how? By destroying those it judges unworthy. Thrax's voice held a bitter edge. I don't think it's that simple, Ilara replied. It could have destroyed your entire fleet. It didn't. It could have obliterated Nova Haven. It didn't. It's not an executioner, Commander. It's more like a course correction. Thrax was silent for a long moment. There are legends, he finally said, his voice lower. Ancient texts from before the Empire's founding. They speak of the shadow ships, vessels that appeared when civilization strayed too far from balance. They were thought to be myths, stories to frighten younglings. His eyes met hers. Now I believe they were warnings. Warnings about what? About the price of empire. Thrax activated another hologram, this one showing the Keldari homeworld surrounded by thousands of colony markers, trade routes, and military installations. We have conquered over 300 species in 2,000 years. We have stripped planets bare. We have erased entire cultures when they resisted. His voice grew quiet. And now something older than stars has come to judge us. Ilara felt a chill. The Empire's brutality was legendary, but to hear one of its commanders speak of it so plainly was unsettling. What do you want from me, Commander? Your help, Thrax said simply. I believe the Harbinger considers humans differently. You are young, expanding, but not yet, corrupted as we are. If it communicated with you once, perhaps it will again. You want me to intercede for the Keldari Empire. Ilara couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. I want you to help prevent what I fear is coming, Thrax replied grimly. The High Command plans to launch a coordinated attack against the Harbinger at Axion Reach. Every warship, every weapon we possess. That's suicide. Yes, Thrax agreed, but they will not listen. Pride blinds them. He straightened. I am prepared to commit treason to prevent this folly. I have a ship waiting, not imperial, but private. I can take you to Axion Reach. You can attempt to communicate with the Harbinger again. Ilara stared at him. Why would you risk everything like this? Because I saw what happened to the Eternal Dominion, Thrax replied, a tremor in his voice. And because I have lived long enough to know that empires fall. I would prefer mine evolve rather than be erased. Admiral Chen was predictably opposed to the plan. It's a trap, he insisted during their hurried meeting. He lures you into Keldari space, captures or kills you, and uses your ship's databanks to learn everything we know about the Harbinger. With respect, sir, I don't think so, Ilara countered. I saw his fear. It was genuine. Fear can drive people to desperate measures, Captain. Exactly, she said. That's why I believe him. The Keldari are terrified of the Harbinger, and for good reason. If they attack it with everything they have and fail. She left the implication hanging. Chen paced the length of his office. And what if you're wrong? What if this is an elaborate Keldari scheme? Then I'm dead, and you've lost a captain and a scout ship, Ilara said bluntly. But if I'm right, we might prevent a catastrophe that could eventually reach human space. After a long debate, Chen reluctantly authorized the mission. The Starweaver would accompany Thrax's ship to Axion Reach, with strict communication protocols and emergency extraction plans in place. What Chen didn't know, what Ilara herself was only beginning to understand, was that her connection to the Harbinger hadn't fully faded. In her dreams, she saw it waiting at Axion Reach, patient and ancient, watching the frantic preparations of the Keldari fleet with something like sadness. It was expecting her. The journey to Axion Reach took 4 days in Thrax's ship, the Wanderer's Path. It was smaller than Ilara had expected, sleek and unmarked. A smuggler's vessel, not a warship. Thrax had brought only a skeleton crew, all of whom seemed as nervous about the mission as they were about having humans aboard. We're approaching the outer perimeter, Thrax announced as they gathered on the bridge. We'll have approximately 6 hours before the Imperial sensors detect us. Ilara studied the tactical display. The Harbinger was visible as a dark anomaly in high orbit around a massive space station. Axion Reach itself, surrounding it in a wide perimeter, was the largest collection of Keldari warships she had ever seen. There must be over 100 vessels, Lieutenant Marcos whispered. 147. Thrax corrected grimly, including 12 dreadnoughts. When is the attack scheduled? Ilara asked. Tomorrow, by your reckoning. Thrax's scaled hands tightened on the controls. We must reach the Harbinger before then. As they approached, Ilara felt the familiar presence brushing against her mind. Faint at first, then stronger. Images flashed. Axion Reach in flames, Keldari ships firing upon one another, colonies burning. Then, more distant futures, worlds healing, species cooperating, a different kind of civilization rising from the ashes of empire. It knows we're here, she said quietly. Thrax gave her a sharp look. Can you communicate with it? I think so. But I need to be closer. The Wanderer's path slipped through the Keldari formations with practiced stealth, its systems running silent. The massive station grew larger in their viewports, a sprawling construct of metal and energy fields that housed nearly 1 million Keldari military personnel and their families. One of our oldest and most sacred installations, Thrax explained as they approached, built around the remains of the first Keldari space habitat, the birthplace of our expansion. And hanging above it, the Harbinger waited, a shadow against the stars. We're in range, Thrax announced. As close as I dare take us without being detected. Ilara nodded and closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind as she had before. Harbinger, she called silently. I've come to understand. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Harbinger's presence flooded her consciousness, more direct and clear than before. It recognized her. You have returned. You have brought one who seeks change. Yes, Ilara thought back. He fears what you might do. We all do. Images cascaded through her mind, the history of the Keldari Empire unfolding in reverse, back to its beginnings. She saw conquest after conquest, the subjugation of hundreds of species, the exploitation of thousands of worlds. And through it all, the Harbinger watching, waiting for the moment when intervention became necessary. The cycle must break, the presence insisted. All empires become that which they once fought against. All conquerors become tyrants. It is the pattern. But it doesn't have to be, Ilara argued. Patterns can change. People can change. Evidence suggests otherwise. Ilara felt Thrax's presence beside her, his mind somehow included in the communion. The Harbinger was allowing him to witness this exchange. Show him, Ilara urged. Show him what could be instead. The visions shifted, showing a different future. The Keldari Empire transforming, releasing its iron grip on conquered worlds, becoming a cooperative alliance rather than a dominion. It showed healing, redemption, growth. This path exists, the Harbinger acknowledged, but it is narrow and difficult. Few choose it. I choose it. Thrax's thoughts broke in, ragged with emotion. I would choose it for my people. One commander cannot change an empire, the Harbinger responded. Then show them, Ilara thought. Show them all, as you showed us. There was a long pause, a sense of ancient contemplation. Then, such direct intervention has risks. Minds may break. Society may fracture. Better that than destruction, Thrax argued. My people are proud, stubborn, but not beyond redemption. They must see what I have seen. Another pause, longer this time. Then the Harbinger's presence withdrew slightly, as if coming to a decision. Very well. Stand witness, both of you. What comes now has not been done in countless cycles. The Harbinger began to change. Its shadow form expanded, stretching outward in tendrils of darkness that reached toward Axion Reach. The massive station's lights flickered as the tendrils touched it, then stabilized. The Keldari fleet, noticing the disturbance, began to move into attack positions. What's happening? Marcos asked, staring at the view screen in horror. It's connecting, Ilara said softly, to all of them at once. The Harbinger's form continued to expand until it had enveloped the entire station and reached out to touch each of the surrounding warships. For a brief, terrifying moment, everything went silent. Communications ceased. Energy readings flatlined, as though the entire Caldari force had been frozen in time. Then, as one, every ship and the station itself blazed with light. Not weapons fire, not explosions, but a soft, pulsing radiance that seemed to emanate from within the structures themselves. "They see," the Harbinger's voice echoed in Ilara's mind. "They all see." "The paths," Thrax whispered beside her, his eyes wide with understanding. "It's showing them all the paths." For hours, the light continued. The Caldari fleet remained in position, neither advancing nor retreating. No communications were transmitted, no weapons activated. It was as though the entire military force of the Empire had entered a collective trance. And then, gradually, the light began to fade. The Harbinger's tendrils withdrew, pulling back into its central form. The shadow ship resumed its original shape, hovering silently above Axion reach. Communications channels suddenly erupted with voices, confused, emotional, questioning. "Look," Marcos pointed to the tactical display. "The fleet is dispersing. They're standing down." Thrax received an incoming transmission from the station. The face that appeared on screen was that of Supreme Admiral Krell, the highest authority in the Caldari military. "Commander Thrax," Krell said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "You will return to Axion Reach immediately. The High Council has been convened." "What of the humans?" Thrax questioned. Krell's gaze shifted to Ilara. "They are to be commended. The human captain understood what we could not." He paused. "The attack has been cancelled. Permanently." After the transmission ended, Thrax turned to Ilara, a complex emotion in his reptilian eyes. "What happened?" she asked. "The Harbinger showed them everything," he replied. "Every path, every possibility, every consequence. They cannot unsee it now." He straightened. "There will be chaos for a time. Change never comes easily to the Caldari, but it will come." Above the station, the Harbinger began to move, not drifting as before, but with clear purpose. It accelerated smoothly, heading out of the system. "Where is it going?" Marcos wondered. Ilara knew, somehow. To watch, to wait. There are other empires, other civilizations making the same choices. Its work isn't finished. As the Harbinger receded from view, finally vanishing in a blur of movement that defied their sensors, Ilara felt its presence touch her mind one final time. "Remember the paths you have seen, Captain Voss. Your species stands at its own crossroads. Choose wisely." 6 months later, Ilara stood on the observation deck of Helios Station, the newest human outpost established at the newly created neutral zone between human space and the Caldari territories. Beside her stood Thrax, now bearing the insignia of an ambassador rather than a military commander. "The treaty negotiations are proceeding well," he noted, watching as ships from both species docked and departed below them. "Your diplomats are persistent. Some would say stubborn," Ilara replied with a small smile. "A trait our species share." Thrax turned to look at the stars. The Harbinger has not been seen since that day, but its impact remains. The Caldari Empire was changing. Slowly, painfully, but unmistakably. Conquered worlds were being granted autonomy. Resources were being redistributed. Ancient wrongs were beginning to be addressed. And humanity, warned by the example, was reassessing its own path of expansion. The hunger for new territories had been tempered by a new wisdom, a recognition that some patterns were too dangerous to repeat. "Do you think it will return?" Thrax asked. Ilara considered the question. Sometimes, in her dreams, she still saw glimpses of possible futures, the gift or burden the Harbinger had left her with. "I think it's still watching," she said finally. "And I think whether it returns depends entirely on us." As they gazed out at the stars together, human and Caldari standing as equals, Ilara thought about the countless civilizations that had risen and fallen across the galaxy, the countless patterns that had played out through time. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, their pattern might be different. Somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the harbinger drifted, watchful and patient, judging, but also hoping.